Welcome to Emotional Resilience, Living with the Fruit of the Spirit. I'm your host and author, Ron Ovitt. Today we're on session 27, MindSkills, the fifth in the series on MindSkills, and today we're going to do self-talk and affirmations. We've been looking at MindSkills, different ways of, regulating our emotions. Now, we've actually broken into three different types. The first is what I would call somatic or body, soma meaning body, things that we do with our body that cause us to be able to regulate our emotions. And so we talked about relaxing, grounding, breathing, even posture can do things to help us change our emotional state. Today we're going to start a series on the cognitive mind skills, and that's going to be self-talk, affirmations, how do we correct our thinking. We're going to be talking about the thinking. And then we're going to get into the spiritual mind skills, knowing God, knowing the Holy Spirit, His Word, how those spiritual disciplines can help make a difference in our life and help us regulate our emotions. You see, the cognitive mind skills are important, and they'll combine with the spiritual because we're fighting a battle in our mind. We're fighting the thoughts that we have. You can't help what thought comes into your mind. Some people have counted them, 60,000 thoughts a day. I've heard others say higher, but we have thoughts all the time. And I work with a lot of people in counseling, and some have, these intrusive thoughts and where's it coming from? Why is it here? And a lot of times I need to tell them it's not the why, it's the what. And if it's faulty wiring, it's due to faulty wiring. If it's a lie, if it's something's not true, then we need to be able to ride the wave. We need to extinguish it, not worried about where it comes from. We can't often help what thoughts come into our mind. But we do know that they have roots. A lot of them are just deceptive brain messages. And in their groundbreaking book, You're Not Your Brain, Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz and Rebecca Gladling write an excellent book. And I remember reading it years ago because they actually did a lot of work with OCD behavior. And when you think about it, OCD behavior is a hard thing to overcome. You have a compulsion, right? It's obsessive, and you want to do something you don't understand. Where's it coming from? Why am I so obsessed? How did I get triggered, right? And yet they were able to come up with a 4-step program that is similar to what we teach, and that is that it's faulty wiring. You don't have to listen to it. You can ride the wave, similar to what we talk about in this class. And I want to read to you what they said in their introduction, because I think it's so relevant to what we're doing here. They say, there are few true necessities in life, but for many of us, it doesn't feel that way. A lifetime of habits ingrained by repetition can seemingly make us slaves to not an always kind benefactor, our own brain. Nothing is more confusing or painful than when your brain takes over your thoughts. It attacks your self-worth, questions your abilities, overpowers you with cravings, or attempts to dictate your actions. And they ask this, have you ever felt that something is compelling you to go places, mentally or emotionally, where you don't want to be? Do you find yourself acting in uncharacteristic ways or doing things that you don't really want to be doing? The reason is simple: deceptive brain messages. These deceptive brain messages have intruded into your psyche and taken over your life. This can lead to overthinking problems and fretting over things that are out of your control, getting stuck or panicked by unfounded fears or worries, blaming and chastising yourself for things that are not your fault, engaging in unhealthy behaviors to escape life's daily stresses, or reverting to past patterns when you are trying to make a change. And listen to this, they say this is key. The more often you act in these unhealthy ways, the more you teach your brain that what is simply a habit, that is a learned behavior, is essential to your survival. Your brain does not distinguish whether the action is beneficial or destructive. It just responds to how you behave and then generates strong impulses, thoughts, desires, cravings, and urges that compel you to perpetuate the habit, whatever it may be. Clearly, they say, the brain can exert a powerful grip on one's life. But listen to this, but only if you let it. The good news is that you can overcome the brain's control and rewire your brain to work for you by learning to debunk the myths that has been so successfully selling you and choosing to act in healthy, adaptive ways. I hope you can understand why I wanted to take the time to read that, and I encourage you to get the notes. If you don't have the notes, you can contact me at ron@empowerministry.org. That's ron@empowerministry.org. And read that over again. Read it. Sometimes it takes a few times, but you want to really understand what he's saying. It is makes so much sense. You see, when we were children, the parents a lot of times projected things upon us that they were troubled with in their childhood. The old form of projection. If they were told, listen, you got to behave, don't make so much noise, children should be seen and not heard, then you'll be surprised when you're acting out as a child that they get upset when you do that. It's a natural phenomenon that happens sometimes. It's so ingrained in them, it's like their inner critic is taking over and getting you in trouble, right, for what they got in trouble for. And this is how that kind of stuff perpetuates. Now, as adults, when we get falsely accused or someone attacks us verbally or says that we're doing something wrong, we can kind of take it with a grain of salt. If it's at work and we did something wrong, we can apologize and we make amends, we can do it over, we can do things to correct it. But what do we do when we're children? When we're children and those that are our caregivers, the ones that are supposed to love us, are acting in an unloving way, it doesn't make sense. And so the child, because they don't have the resources, they're not an adult, it becomes internalized. There's something wrong with me. I must be the reason for your look of anger, disgust, fear, sadness, or whatever the emotion is. And so my brain picks that up, the amygdala picks that up as something to watch out for. And I may not even have the total meaning at that point, but with repetition, pretty soon, I keep thinking about it and I start putting feelings and words to it. And that's where we get negative affirmations. We're going to talk about positive affirmations today, but the truth is many of us are full of affirmations all the time, but they're negative. When you're growing up, it may have been sometimes, go sit down, you can't do that. Or maybe you weren't picked for the team. You were the last one picked or not picked because they felt you were no good, right? And you picked up this thing. Or maybe they said, you're a loser and people teased you or whatever. Or maybe your body wasn't the way someone else felt it should be. And you were attacked verbally, perhaps emotionally, and maybe even physically, or bullied. And you took and internalized all that. And those thoughts there that you started to generate, like I must be no good, I'm damaged, there's something wrong with me, I have to perform in order for people to like me, that then becomes part of our stories. And they become part of our inner critic that keeps us in line. And a lot of times it stops us from thinking positive things about ourselves. And what do these negative beliefs do? Well, remember, we've said it in the past, the primary job of our brain is to keep us safe, And if we have these negative beliefs about ourselves, then the consequences of those beliefs are that we're going to get in trouble if we don't act right. We have to earn love. We have to, do something to compensate for what's going on. And unfortunately, those beliefs often don't have anything to do with truth, but it becomes our truth. And it may not even be totally cognitively, but it feels true. If I was to ask you, do you believe you're stupid? You'd probably, if you really had enough time to think about it, you'd have to say, well, you know, I passed school, I went on to college, I did this. No, I'm not stupid. But if I asked you, have you ever felt that way? You might have to say, well, yeah, I remember when I was in 6th grade and I blanked out at the board. I couldn't think of the answer and everyone laughed at me and the teacher said, what's wrong with you? And I felt stupid. And a lot of times those things, because of our negativity bias, stick with us. They stay with us. And so I have a list here of some of the things that you can look at in the notes here that is a test for inner negativity. For example, do you find yourself needing to please people? Do you get overly upset if someone's mad at you? If you're working by yourself and make a mistake, do you get angry at yourself? Do you have extra high standards? And so I have a whole list here that you can go through and look at. A lot of these come from my own experience, you know. Are you self-conscious when you go into a room of strangers? And these are cues and clues, right? To the fact is I might have some negative self-talk going on, some negative self-image, right, that I need to work on. And then I give you a whole list of some of the things that the inner critic can attack us with. You see, we want to talk about ways to overcome this, but if we don't understand what we have, then we can't apply the remedy. And so I think it's important that we do these self-examination here. Yes, and to believe some of these things might hurt a little bit. They might bring tears to our eyes, but that's okay. You're not going to die if you get in touch with something emotional. And here's the good news. It's a lie. It's not true. It feels true. But if we can find out some of these, now we can change it. And so I want you to look at that. There's the inner critic, you know, that might say you'll never amount to anything, or you're so stupid, you can't, so don't even try. Or there's the inner shamer, right? You're no good, you're broken, you'll never amount to anything. Or perhaps the inner pessimist or doubter. Oh, that won't work. Everything is wrong. I doubt if it's going to work. Or the inner punisher. You better not fail or else. I'll give you something to cry about. You know, stop or I'll knock you off that high horse. Or there can be that inner terror. I won't love you. If you fail, you'll be nothing. You know, they'll always leave you. I mean, those kind of things are terrorizing to us, right? Or the inner sadness. It will never be the same. You'll be all alone. It was your fault. And so we have these different kinds of inner shamers and inner critics that go on in our life. And I really want you to take a look at that and circle them. Pray over them and say, Lord, I know I've felt this, but I want to change. It's not true, and I want to believe the truth. And you'll see, because I give you a list here too, of what are the triggers. And that's what gets us sometimes. We don't quite understand, where's it coming from? Well, if you look at the list, there's looks of disgust, there's being put down or mocked, someone has over expectations and you just know that you can't meet them. There's favoritism or comparison to other people. Someone abandons you, leaves you alone and you're sitting there wondering why. Perhaps it's an angry tone or a look. Threats, there's looks of rejection, even the blank stare, right? All these things can be different cues that cause us then to be triggered, and we go right into the negative beliefs. We spiral downhill. And so that causes then our belief response. And so the brain then makes predictions. They see that look and it predicts, there's that look. I better straighten up. I better behave. Oh man, and we start reacting, right? And we fight, flight, freeze, and so those are the ways that we react. And the trouble is, a lot of these come because we haven't fulfilled those maturity needs that we have. We've talked about them before, the soul yearnings, we called them. And so we have needs to be lovable and be loved unconditionally. And if not, then I must perform to please. And there's all kinds of beliefs that come with that. You know, I'm defective. I must avoid criticism. I must isolate myself. Here again, go through the list. This is a critical lesson here where we can really get in touch with some of these things, because we're going to add to it as we go along. We're preparing to get into the emotional relearning. But we're never going to emotionally relearn anything if we don't know what we've already emotionally learned. And so the need to be accepted. If not, then I have fear of being rejected and abandoned, and that results in a lot of negative behavior and thoughts, right? A need to fit in, the avoidance and disapproval of others. And we have that need to be safe. And if not safe, then we can't trust or take chances to be myself. And you'd be surprised how many of us can't really have that freedom, be who we truly are. And then the need to belong. If not, then I can have social issues. I can't be sociable or must cling to others. And that results in a lot of thinking and behavior as well. So again, please go through those, look at them, pray over them, talk to God about them. Lord, open my eyes to see them. There's nothing wrong here. It doesn't mean you're broken, you know, it can't be fixed, but we need to understand what it is. And here's the good news. We can change. And that's where we're going to start today, talking about affirmations. And we're going to talk about how do we change some of that talk. And we're going to talk about spiritual reasons and things that we can do to help us. So one way we can change these negative affirmations is by replacing them with positive affirmations. And they're important. They're a great tool because they're easy to use, right? And they only take seconds. It's easy to believe. Now that's if we do it the way I'm talking about. And they do work. There's been a lot of studies that I mentioned in the lesson that have highlighted how affirmations can really help us with our desires and our behaviors and that. And when we look at affirmations, there's three different types. There's being something, right? We want to affirm that we have certain characteristics and our desire to, believe something once about ourselves. And then there's the receiving something. And so the believing something, I once had a person email me one of those general emails that says, you're beautiful, you're loved, you're needed. Those kind of things are positive affirmations. We should feel that we're loved, right? We should feel that we're needed. And a lot of times those kind of affirmations can help us. And then there's the receiving something, by the power of our words, and where, I draw money to myself. And then there's achieving something where we have certain characteristics or position or accomplishments. Now, those are okay, but I want to qualify it. Just because we say something doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. Affirmations are not a magic chant. We're not talking about superstition here. We're not talking about chants. I believe words are important. I know firsthand what it's like to feel that I'm unlovable, right? And fill my head with negative self-beliefs. So negative words, they carry weight. Positive words can too. But I believe that there have to be rules when we talk about affirmations. I think there's rules that need to guide us. And so first, it needs to be realistic. The question is it reachable? Is it ownable? Is it measurable? Can we put progressive rewards? Are we going toward a goal? I draw money to myself, I'll be a millionaire. Well, that's nice to think, and I can understand where you might want to, if that's your goal, envision it. But wouldn't it be better if we know what we need to do to get there, right? That's the second point. It needs to be tied into actions. For example, if your goal is to be healthy, you can affirm that and tie it into what you'll commit to. So instead of just saying, I am healthy, meanwhile you're eating Twinkies and cheeseburgers and not exercising, what you want to do instead, you could say, I'm committed to being healthy and will eat the right foods and exercise to make this happen. Isn't that an exciting affirmation? That has actions tied with the belief that it's going to happen. It's a little more action than just I'm healthy and full of energy. If it's financially independent, right? Then you could say, I commit to being financially independent and will make the phone calls I need today to make it happen. But a lot of times we steer away from those because there's actions. But that's what it takes, right? And then when we get that kind of affirmations, we want to emotionally affirm it. We want to emotionally affirm it. If it's an affirmation about who I am, for example, I'm loved, then we want to find proof. And we can ask ourselves, who do I know? What have I experienced? Has there been a time when I was loved? Have anyone ever loved me? Now think about that. There probably has been. What do you know to be true? What kind of evidence in the jury of our mind can agree with this, you see? And so we want to use that kind of logic to build our case. And once we build that case and we start to say those affirmations that make sense to us and that we agree can be true because there's evidence, then get a support group. Start visualizing it. Believe it in your body. If your body doesn't buy it, the brain won't neither. If we can relax and breathe and say the affirmation and know that it's true, our body believes it, our brain will follow. And once we get those affirmations go, there are things we can do to really make the cement dry. It's wet cement because it takes time to really think about it and work it out and get the affirmations that really make sense to you. But once you do, you get the people, you let people that you love and that love you know that you're doing this, where they can support you. You visualize yourself being happy and excited about the change. You practice it, you meditate on it, you create words, right? You can even do what we talked before, right and left, bilateral stimulation to really open the mind to it. And so I've given you a worksheet that has room to do quite a few affirmations on it. And you write down the affirmations, and then you put your proof text in there. What other people believe this about me? Things I have done that really affirmed it about me. Things I have read or heard that really affirm it. Things I need to do to accomplish this affirmation. And then you make a commitment. Believing in the affirmation, I commit myself to what percent? 20, 10, 100? To doing and you write it down, what it is doing, in order to accomplish this affirmation. If you'll follow that guideline, I think you'll find that you'll have some powerful affirmations that will come against yourself. You can take those negative beliefs, write out a positive belief, get the support for it, start meditating on it. You can take those negative behaviors, write out the positive behaviors, put the proof text for it, and then start going after it. And you'll find that it will really help. And then in the end of the lesson, I put down biblical affirmations. The Bible is full of positive affirmations for you. In fact, I've given you some scriptures here that I've put in the first person. I put them in the first person so you can say them as if they were true. When the Lord says, cast all your care upon me because I care for you, you can read that and say, boy, that's nice, maybe I'll do that. Or you could say, I'm casting all my cares upon God because he cares for me. Do you see how that's an affirmation? And that's what I've done. I've tried to stay true to the scriptures, but I'm putting it into action and belief sentences, okay? And so I want you to pray and read them. I want you to really test them in your heart. And if you find that you're not quite believing it, talk to God about it. Lord, I want to believe this. Help me believe. I love that part in the scripture where the guy wasn't sure. And Jesus said, all things can happen if you believe. And he says, Lord, I believe, but help me with my unbelief. And God knows that. That's a great prayer, and he can help you. And then just say, Lord, help me to receive it. Help me to receive it and to see it. And you can visualize. And then breathe it. Really believe the affirmation. Put it into your whole body and soul as you read and meditate. I'm casting all my cares upon God because he cares for me. And you can meditate that, casting all my cares, casting all my cares, casting all my cares upon him, casting all my cares upon him because he cares for me. Do you see how you can break that down? Each part has such an important part, and we can really start to believe that. And so I have a bunch of them, self-control, anger, and many others. So I encourage you again, if you don't have the notes, write me at ron@empowerministry.org, and I'll be happy to send them to you. Next time, we're going to talk about belief exchange. How do we exchange some of these beliefs? We're going to go over this a little bit more. Some of it's going to be somewhat redundant, but we're trying to get into the cognitive approach to regulating our emotions. You know, Jesus said himself, the truth will set you free. Now, he was talking about spiritual truth, specifically about the truth that he was sharing, but I believe that's true for all truth. That as we know the truth about who we are, as we know about how God loves us and how he's created us as lovable, human beings, as we believe the truth and we affirm the truth and we come against those negative thoughts, God's going to change us. And we're going to see that we're going to be able to live that life of joy that we always wanted to live.